right. What's up, y'all? And welcome back to the Michael Experience Podcast. I am your orator and originator, Michael, and these are my thoughts on my life, my way. So, first of all, I just want to thank you all for a wonderful break into season two of the Michael Experience Podcast. It has been just so wonderful seeing people all across the world that are listening to the podcast, that are getting things out of it, and are sharing it. And that is what really warms my heart because I started this podcast as kind of my way of being of service to the world and using my life and my stories as a sounding board. So hopefully they make other people feel seen, heard, understood, and less alone in going through it or getting through it or getting over it, whatever that may be. So I'm just very grateful and my heart is full knowing that so many people across the world resonate with the stories and the feelings and that they are sharing. I love getting, DMs, or I love seeing, people rate it and say I learned so much. So thank you all for the support and love of the Mike Experience Podcast. This is only the beginning, and to be featured in the One Black Podcast a Day newsletter was very, very heartwarming as well. So thank you all for your love and support, and y'all continue to follow anywhere you listen to your podcast. All right, so we've been on this journey of hard truths, and I think this is very important to talk about because there are moments in our lives where we just feel like we shouldn't say anything because it's offensive or it's not PC or it seems like an attack on somebody else, friends, family, whoever. But the reality is that the hard truth in it keeps you swallowing the thing. It keeps you cowering in certain spaces. It keeps you muted in certain conversations. So the thing that we must all do, well, the thing that I believe we should all do is address it to ourselves first. What does it really mean that I feel this way? And why is it that it is being perceived the way that it is outwardly? Now, I think we all have a set of guidelines or invisible rules that we have kind of taken from our childhood. We don't tell people our business. You never say that about certain people in your family. And even though it may be true, you don't ever say that to anybody. And I think a lot of times, not only does that extend outside of your home, but it also extends to yourself and how you create mental roadblocks around it. Because if no one else around you should hear these things that you feel or that you sense or that you recall, then that you shouldn't feel them, sense them, or recall them either. And that is the thing that I think keeps a lot of us back. And so, one of the things that I've sat with for the entirety of my life, or should I say most of my life, is my parents. And it's hard to say because to the world, you're supposed to love your parents and you're supposed to admonish them, and they are like the pillars of your life because they brought you into the world. And so saying anything other than that about them would mean something about you as a faithful child or a loyal child, or say something about how move through the world and are able to see other people. And in some ways, it's very true, right? Our parents shape a lot about who we are, but I think some people don't think about what that looks like individually. And I will also add that just because you acknowledge that something was not right or that something did not feel good in your parentalship growing up, it doesn't mean that you hate somebody. It doesn't mean that you're maligning them in any way, but you are just simply acknowledging the hard truth about it. And so I always shared the stories about my childhood with people because I grew up in a very small town. My mother grew up there, and then my father was from Birmingham, and so somehow they met up. But the time that I spent with both of my parents is what informed a lot of my earlier thinking and my decision making. And it wasn't that either one of my parents really ever sat down with me and just had deep and meaningful conversations. A lot of it was just me learning by being there, learning by listening, and sometimes there were good examples for me to look and listen to, but oftentimes there were just bad examples that I deciphered and I said, "You know what? I will not do that." And so both of them are equally valuable in that they teach a lesson of some sort, but I think the pathway to that is what people kind of miss. And so if I can start with my father was very absent growing up. And I mean, he was in and out. He was one of those fathers that sometimes he'd call, right? He'd call consistently for a few months, and then he wouldn't. And then when you heard from him again, he'd have some grand story about life and how he was going to do something for you, buy you clothes, buy you shoes, send you money. But he for a number of years had that same cycle of we'd hear from him and then we wouldn't hear from him, and then he never really came through on what he said he would. And for me, that getting excited about it and then being let down and getting excited about it and being let down, that repetitive cycle of just like creating that and then the anxiety around waiting, I kind of grew very discontent with having conversations with him because even at a very early age, I want to say I was maybe like 9 when I came to this part of my consciousness. I was just like, yeah, he keeps doing the same thing over and over, and I don't want to be a part of that. I don't want to get excited about it again. And so I just remember um, probably a couple of times, but I remember a specific time my mom's like, "Hey, Junior," because that's what my family calls me. Your dad is on the phone." And I was like, "I don't want to talk to him." And she's like, "Boy, get over here and talk to him." And I was like, "No, I don't want to talk to him. He's gonna say the same thing." And so she's like, "Come over here." And so like I'm like, "Ugh," dragging my feet. And so I go over there, I get on the phone, I'm like, "Hello." He's like, "Hey, son, dad loves you. And, I just been out here doing this and that and that." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay, whatever." And he's like, "I know you got such and such coming up. Your mom told me about it. I'm proud of you." And I'm like, "Thank you very much." And he's like, "Okay, well, I'm gonna put you something in the mail and stuff like that. I ain't forgot about it." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, all right. Love you too. Bye." And so that really became my disposition around him. And I just was like, I can't do this emotional roller coaster with this man anymore. He's not here. And every time I talk to him, he's lying. So, to give you some context on how I felt, and I'm telling you, this is like 9 forward. And so I just was like, okay, that's just the relationship that I have or don't have, should I say. And I'm just going to have to live with it. And I remember, you know, um, at some point between being an early teenager, so somewhere in between, maybe 13ish, between 9 and 13ish, I guess I should say. I remember going to Birmingham and me and my brother, and I remember us just hanging out for maybe 2 weeks or I don't know, 3 weeks or something like that. And we had a really good time. Me and my brother, we had a really good time. We met, some girls that were there, and we became really cool with them for the time we were there. So we had a really good time. But I remember feeling like, even though my father was my father, I just felt like he wasn't. I was like, I'm sitting here moving around and interacting with this man. Do I know who he is? Yes, but it doesn't feel very fatherly. And I'm like, what are the things that I would want my father to give me? And so that trip, I just kept wondering, like, is he going to show up and really, like, really engage in fathership the way that I wanted, or fatherhood the way that I wanted him to, or would he just be here? And he just was there. I mean, he didn't really add anything to the situation, and he just carried on like there were no conversations to be had, or there was really anything for him to do other than just be there. And I said, okay, fine. So I went home. Me and my brother, we went home after that. And I just kind of left I don't know, I guess in my mind it left that same question. Is like, so when does he show up and actually be my dad? Like, when does he show up and actually father me in a way that's really meaningful? Because here I am going into being a teenager, and all I've known from him is lies and empty promises. And so now that I'm becoming a teenager, like, is he going to give me advice to help me? Is he going to, tell me stories of like high school? Like, what is he going to help me with? And the answer was nothing. And so I didn't necessarily think about that often. I mean, it would be a recurring thought throughout my life, like when something was going on. But I think at that moment I settled on the fact that like he's just not going to be present in my life, and I have to be okay with that. But when I look at my family members who are just so excited about him and excited to be around him even now, I don't get that same level of excitement. I really don't. So I have an older brother and an older sister. And every time they're around him and they talk about him, they just light up like little kids, and they're all very, very excited. Now, we all lived, in the same home growing up, and we share similar experiences. Of course, we're different people. So in my mind, I'm thinking, my siblings have to be delusional to align themselves with somebody who just really wasn't there. But I said, you know what? Their relationship with whoever is their relationship. And so this is no different. They're entitled to feel however they want to feel. But it did not stop people, my mother and others, from wanting me to have that same level of excitement. And the hard truth in that is I feel like he wasn't there, and I feel like he didn't contribute anything to my life. And so how could I then show up and be excited about a man that never showed up and was excited about me? And that is a conversation that I had to keep having with my siblings and my mom, because although they are free to love him and chat with him and whatever they want to do, I'm just upholding the same I can go without it. I don't really need to have a conversation. I don't need to be close to him. And it doesn't mean that I hate him. And that's the other thing too, is it's like, well, why do you hate him so much? I don't hate the man. I just don't know him. And I find it strange that I am expected to show some deep love and some deep wanting and some deep yearning for somebody who I simply do not know. And just because he's my father and he contributed to me being created, it does not take away from the fact that I moved through my life feeling nothing but absence from the man. And when he did come around, he was simply just there. And if I venture to tell the truth in that, is I feel like he only came in the situation when it could benefit him and when he could take from it. So he never put in more than he took. And so that is the way that I process it. And when I say that out loud to people, they're like, oh, well, you shouldn't say that. You shouldn't say that. That's not nice. Okay, well, it's the truth. It is the truth. It is my truth. It is my recollection, and it is my perception and feeling. So then what do we do about that? Do you want me to swallow that when you ask? Because that would be doing a disservice to me. That would cause me to mute in conversations. That would cause me to shrink in rooms where I felt like I didn't belong or I couldn't be me. And so I'm not willing to afford that price so that father, the term father, the affiliation father or dad can mean something more for you. Now, your situation with your dad can be whatever it may be. That could be my siblings or it could be people around it. Whatever your view of father is in its entirety, whether that's your father or whatever, that is on you. I don't uphold that same mantle. For me, my father was absent. And when he was around, he took more than he gave in the situation. And it did not add value to my life in that way. And so I had to become very comfortable with then people assigning some type of accountability or some type of negative perception on me just for mentioning that, right? And it doesn't mean that I have to mention it to everyone. There are times where I just won't even talk about it because it's not worth the conversation for me. It doesn't do anything for me. But in family ships, right, the pressure to have the conversation sometimes can bring about certain, feelings untoward. And for me, I was just like, okay, if I do engage in the conversation, you guys know how it's gonna go. So but let me go back and say, it doesn't mean that I hate him, and it doesn't mean that I have a dislike for him, because truly, as an adult, I've come to know that I really don't even know him. You know what I'm saying? So, do I hate him? No, I don't have a reason to. He just wasn't there. And that is how I describe it to anyone that asks. So as I navigate new relationships, and that's not just romantic, but new relationships with people, new interactions with people. I use relationships broadly, and I try to contextualize whatever it may, the significance of it may be. But when people are asking about family, I sometimes just don't even mention my dad. And then a lot of people will say, "Well, what about your dad?" And I think a lot of people have that question because I am part of the LGBTQIA. So it is just for whatever reason, a lot of people an inquisitive thought of, is the father there, and is this because the father wasn't there? I'm just being honest about it, right? And so I do know that a lot of people will ask, and that will kind of be the underlying motive. And so I will say he wasn't there. He just wasn't there. And somebody will say, well, you don't know who your dad is. I was like, no, I know who he is. He's come in and out. I know who he is. And so even for people outside of that, they're like, "Did he do something to you? Did he, did like is this a sore spot for you?" And I explained, I said, "No, he just wasn't there, and I can't mourn the loss of something that I did not have." I wouldn't know, and I find myself saying that more and more these days. I said, "I don't even I just don't know what it would be like to have my father around. He just wasn't there. There's no lens, there's no hate for him. He just really wasn't there." And what I do remember, I just know I didn't like. And years ago, in my mid 30s, I suppose that would be, um, after having multiple conversations about my father with family and otherwise, I said to myself, you know what? How can I, at this point, not take any accountability, but take some responsibility to see if the father that I wanted that would give me advice, the father that I wanted to talk about my career with, the father that I just wanted to talk about being a father with, because I'm a father, and that comes with its own set of ideologies and actions. So I was like, now, just what if I could just scrap the I'm trying to meet my father situation, or I need my father, because as kids, I think we do this thing where we're like, I want my dad, I want my dad. And it's for all those warm and fuzzy moments. It's for all of those, moments where you need the tutelage and you want it to be like, yeah, my dad. But as an adult, I was like, I don't need that. So I'm not mourning the loss of that. I don't need that. That's already gone. You can't replace it. But what if I could just meet him as a man, and in that, I learned that there is a relationship, right? What as a man now in life, because he's still older, he should be more experienced and, all of the things. I said, now what if? And so I orchestrated this trip for me and my siblings because I definitely needed them for emotional support. And they were just very happy about it. Like, oh my God, I can't believe you're doing this. Like, we're going to see dad. Like, yeah. So we did a road trip. And I was in Baltimore at the time. And so I think I was in Baltimore. Was I in Ohio? I think I may have moved to I think I was living in Ohio at the time. So my brother and sister came down to Ohio. I think we jumped in the car and we drove 8 or 9 hours to Birmingham, Alabama, and it was really just. And I told them it was really just for me to discover if there could be a connection, and that was me taking some responsibility in maybe this could be a relationship after all, And my thought was like, we're both adult men here, and surely he's grown and experienced more. And if he wasn't going to take the initiative to connect with me, I would do it. And what would be the harm? So me and my siblings, we set out on this journey and we go, right? We go there, we make it. The family is there. My grandmother, who I hadn't seen since I was a teenager. My aunt, same. I hadn't seen her since that trip I talked about where me and my brother went as like early teenagers. So I mean, it was great to see everybody, to be embraced, to look in their faces and see, resemblances. It was really, really wonderful. And my brother and sister were happy. And they were happy just because they knew my disposition about it. And the fact that I wanted to put this together was like monumental. And so, my dad is there and it's like, okay. And we go to dinner and we do the things. And the whole time I was there, I couldn't figure out quite what words I wanted to say to him, and I think that's the interesting thing for me. I didn't know what I wanted to say to him. Like, how do you start the conversation and say, well, I don't really see you as my dad. I don't see you as my father necessarily, like biological sense, of course. And I understand it in that way, but I don't see you there as a feeling, as a parental figure, as a guiding source. I don't see you there. But what I would like to do is see you as a man. I didn't quite know how to get that out. And so until I got the words, I kind of just moved through the conversations like I would meeting new friends, So like, hey, what have you been up to? Or hey, how's life treating you? And talking about what I had going on. I just kind of moved in that space. And then I just kind of felt like, what am I doing here? I remember thinking like, what am I doing here? This guy has no clue. And I don't even know what to say to him to make this conversation um, mean, or I don't know how to mean what I wanted it to mean, or how to get this conversation going and set the real intention for it, I guess, so to speak. And so it just bothered me. It just bothered me. And so we went to I remember the night we went back to our hotel room, and I just was so bothered because I was like, he almost has no idea why I'm here. Although they knew the reason, my father's side of the family, they knew why I was coming. But I was like, he has no idea that I feel the way that I feel. And he has no idea what I'm really going through inside as it relates to him. And then I was like, or does he? Or does he? And he just doesn't care. Like, these are the things that I'm thinking about in our hotel room. Um, so we get up the next day, we do some things, we meet up with the family, and my father pulls me to the side. And so at this moment, I'm thinking, okay, well, maybe, all this worrying and stuff I did the night before, I am, maybe this is going to be the thing, the turning point. So my father and I were walking to, I want to say there was like a corner store. And so we were walking to the corner store, and he and I just were talking, and he let me know like that he had kept up with me over the years, and was very proud of all of my accomplishments and, saying things like, um, I'm proud of you and your mom has been telling me and your brother and sister keep me up on everything that's happening with you and I do think about you often and just things like that. And I think he also thanked me for um saving his life at one point. And so if I may interject that just for context since I brought it up, um I want to say somewhere around 2017, 2018, I get a phone call that my father is passed out somewhere in an alley or something. Um, and I don't live anywhere near any of my family, so I'm across the United States at this point, so I'm always living somewhere else. And so at this point, I was in Texas. I believe they were all in some part of Indiana. And so I get a phone call like, oh my God, your dad was laid out in an alley or whatever the case may be. Now, I think I had gotten so many people who told me that because, old friends from high school or whatever, people had been sending me in my Facebook, and I really just don't pay attention to stuff like that. But people had been sending stuff, and if I wouldn't even, if I'm being very honest with you all, I wouldn't even, if they said something about my dad, or if I saw a caption with my dad or text or something that says, this is your dad or something, I wouldn't even look at it because there's just no real connection for me. However, my siblings actually called me and was like, "Did you see this video that's going around?" And I was like, "No." And so I think we were on a group call. The video, they dropped it in the chat or whatnot, what have you not. And so I see this video of him just like, very out of it and laying between like two trash cans, like the little circular trash cans or whatnot. And I remember my siblings laughing, and I was like, "You guys, this is not funny." I was like, "This is not funny," you know? And my sister was like, "Well, what are we supposed to do or whatever? Like, he's grown and stuff like that." I was like, "I don't know what you all are supposed to do, but a grown man passing out in an alley laying next to trash means that there's a bigger issue." And to me, even though I do not speak to the man, I have not, been around him, like, the human compassion in me was like, that is not okay. I was like, what is going on with that? And I think that was the first time I really inquired. And I was like, what is going on? And, what have you not? And so, at that point, they both kind of simmered down and we were able to talk a little bit. And I was like, I don't know what you guys are gonna do, but like that is just not okay. And maybe contact, the family back in Birmingham. I was like, maybe contact them and, you know, see if he wants to go back home because he's either in an environment that he just shouldn't be in or something. And so some time went on or whatever. And I got another phone call and it was like, okay, I think, was this the phone call they said that I don't remember. I got so many phone calls, I can't remember, but I believe there was a phone call that he was running through the streets nude or something of the sort. And I think there was another phone call I had gotten that he was just not himself. Like almost like he was, I guess he'd be out and then he'd just kind of be mumbling and, talking really gibberishly, I guess, I suppose is the best way I can put it. Incoherently, I guess. And so you take one call and you get so many, which is what I did not want, but there we are. And so, I got with my siblings and I said, "What is all of this? Like, what is going on?" And so we talked, and they were like, "Yeah, he's not seeming so well, and all of these things." And I was like, um, "Maybe he needs to go home." And I am the youngest sibling, you guys and gals, and they, them, and pals. But I said, maybe he needs to go home. Now, here's the thing about me as a person. I never want to see anybody doing bad. I don't care who it is. Never want to see anybody doing bad. And I never would add, any hurt or harm or danger to someone's situation. I really do uphold that at the very least, if you cannot help someone's situation, please don't harm it. And so for me, I was like, does he want to go home? Because I knew that he always did better back in Birmingham. No matter if he was around his children or whatever, my brother and sister are very different in the way that they live, and not in any bad way, but they're just very different. And I was like, maybe he wants to go. He probably needs to go home. He seems to do better when he's at home. He's in his element. It's where he was born and raised. He seems to know people there. He seems to be more comfortable. Maybe he needs to go home. And so, again, I haven't had any conversations with him, but I said, can you guys get him to a phone? Can you get him to a phone? And they were like, yeah. I said, okay, well, I'm working, but I'm going to turn my ringer on, which is something I don't do often. I said, but get him to the phone and let me talk to him. And so they did. They got him to the phone and he knew it was me. And I was just like, hey, Michael, because that's his name too. And I called him by his last name as well, because that's how I talk to him mostly. And I was like, hey. He's like, hey, son. I'm like, are you ready to go home? And he kind of just, I could tell that he was getting very emotional. Because it's just like that, those little noises, people are like, yeah. He kind of had this little thing like he didn't want to say it, but it was like, it's like you can tell that a person is gritting their teeth and really not wanting to say the thing, but it's like, yeah, I do want to go home, and probably didn't want to say it because he was around my siblings and things like that. And so maybe there's a hard truth in that for him too, is that maybe he does love his children or have loved us to a degree, but maybe he just always felt comfortable where he was in Birmingham and maybe that was his safe place. And so I said, I need you to say it to me coherently. I said, do you want to go home? He said, yeah, I want to go home. I said, if I send you home today, are you going to go home today? Yes. I said, okay. I said, I am going to purchase your ticket. My siblings, I said, whatever you guys need from me, you let me know. I said, you get him there, call his sister, call his mother, let him know that he will be coming home today. Let them know he will be coming home today. Okay, whatever you guys need, I will do. And so I bought his ticket. I sent my brother gas money or my sister. I can't remember who took him, and I sent him home that day. So I didn't do that for an applause or anything like that. So I want to be very clear for those who are listening to this. I didn't do it out of allegiance to him. I didn't do it because that's my dad and anything like that. I did it because the very human parts of me still have compassion, and that regardless of if there was some emptiness there with me, right? I have nothing against this person and I want them to be great wherever they are. So, bringing us back to the conversation in 20 I don't know what it was, but I was in my 30s at this point. So, taking us back to, we've taken this road trip to Alabama and we're there, me and my father walking to the corner store having a conversation, and he says to me, "Thank you for saving my life that day." So, now we're back. Now we're back, okay? Um I was like, "You're welcome. You're welcome." Now, I mean, he really didn't need to thank me for that because the humanity in me just was just like, "Let's get him back home." Like, I know that that's where even if I don't know much about him, I knew he always seemed to do better when he was home. And so he was like, "Thank you so much for saving my life, and I don't know if I would have made it if I wouldn't have left." And I said, "Well, you're welcome." I said, "You didn't have to thank me, but you're welcome." And so we're just having more conversation. And I remember feeling good about the conversation just because I'm like, okay, well, maybe there is something there with this person. Maybe it's not what I want it to be, it's certainly not what I wanted growing up, but certainly it's not what I even would want it to be now. And he's limited, at this point. He's in his 60s, and there are some other psychological and mental health things that prevent him from, being the person that I knew him as, and how he moved through the world. So there are factors that contribute to it, and so I was like, well, maybe all that, considered, maybe there's something there. And for a brief moment, I got a sense of just kind of warmth in the moment. I was like, okay, he follows what I do or whatever. I don't need him to say he's proud of me, but I'm just glad that he keeps informed about my comings and goings. So okay, all right, there's something to work with here. And then something happens, like within a few minutes. He's like, hey, just one more thing. I haven't been working, and I was wondering if you could give me a couple of dollars, just until I get myself on my feet. And I remember just sinking back into, my skin, and the dropping to the feelings dropping in the pit of my stomach back to feeling like I was when I was a kid, and I was like, "God, he always comes into a situation and takes more than he gives." And you know what? Even though it felt like a gut punch, I smiled. I reached into my wallet and gave him whatever was in there. I don't remember. It may have been like 60 or $70. And I just gave it to him, and I was like, "There you go." I was like, "There you go." And he's like, "Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate it." And I said, "Mm-hmm." And so, I met back up with my siblings, and I was like, "I'm ready to go." And they were like, "Wait, what?" I said, "I'm ready to go home, so let's go." And so that was the end of the trip. But here's the thing about it, right? The truth, the hard truth is that I took that trip, um, fully probably knowing who the man that he was, had been, and currently still is. I took that trip knowing more so than not that it would end this way, right? And in knowing that, I had to accept that I walked into the space feeling like I didn't know my father. I didn't have a relationship with him. Um, could I create one? I walked into it with all of these things, and I walked out of it still not having a father, right? And that's okay. That's okay. That is okay, right? I walked away knowing that it was okay. Hard truth. I probably ended up as the man I am today because he wasn't around, and who I was meant to become, and what I was meant to accomplish, and how I was meant to treat other people probably wouldn't have been if I allowed, or if the universe, if God allowed him to be in my life. And so the hard truth is that I am thankful that he wasn't there to teach me how to not work in society. Um, I'm grateful and thankful that he didn't give me the spirit of, lying, and this spirit of, you know, uh, putting things off, and shirking my responsibilities. I'm very thankful that I didn't take on those qualities, because who knows? I'm glad I didn't take on the spirit of using people, right? Family, friends, or otherwise. I imagine he did that to most people. He took more than he gave in a situation, and he was okay with that. I can give of myself endlessly, and I'm always looking to be of service to people. And so I'm very, very thankful in this moment that I did not have that, and that as an adult, I did not allow that to cloud my judgment or to dim my light or take away from me. all because other people said, "Well, he's half of the reason why you got here, so that should mean something." Yeah, it meant that he did exactly what he was supposed to do when he was doing what he, you know, was doing. No more or no less. And we don't need to make it more than what it was. And I remember having a conversation with my mom one day, and she said something to the effect of, "Well, all of these good things that you have, he's still a part of it. He's you still owe him some credit for it." I said, "I don't owe him credit for anything." I said, "Now, I'm gonna say this, and this might mean more to you than it does to me, but I am the product of you 2 getting together for 3 minutes at best and him having a happy ending. So, there's that." And I remember she laughed, my mom laughed, she's like, "You know what? I cannot." But the truth be told is they were just having fun. Like, I wasn't planned. I wasn't a planned baby. They were having fun and bang bang skeet, and here I am. So, that is the only credit, right? And to what I said to her, it probably means more to you than it does to me. You had the fun at the end. I don't know. Maybe I hope so. But I did not. That had nothing to do with me. I didn't enjoy any of it. So, that is that situation. But I'm thankful that he wasn't there, right? To pollute the water, to taint the mentality that I have, and to dim the gift that I'm able to now give to the world in the form of this, my life, my stories, my passion, just everything. When I say that this is more than just a podcast, it is my life, and it is my life's work. And so I'm very proud of this. But wasn't that a hard truth to say? Didn't it seem hard to some people? Like, "Ugh, well, I would never say that about my dad. I would never, even if I wouldn't say it." But you have to say it. You have to say it to yourself so that you are not, 40 years old chasing the dream of a father that you wanted when you were 5 or 6 or 7 or even 16 and figuring out the world, or 19 and in college. You're not chasing a man that is not equipped to give you what you need. And I think lying to ourselves, and if I lied to myself, I would have been chasing him at every pivotal moment in my life. When I first went to college, getting my first degree, second degree, third degree, when I finally broke into to doing things publicly, I would have been looking for him as a resource, and he wouldn't have been able to show up because guess what? That just wasn't his wheelhouse. That wasn't his way in the world. It just was not. And I would have been chasing that, and I would have been disappointed. It would have been that cycle of repeating the same emotional roller coaster and that same hamster wheel of emotional turmoil, and the repetitive cycle of when he would say, "I'm gonna send it," and he never said it. "I'm gonna come," and he never came. It would be reinstilling that same emotional, mental, psychological will of getting excited and then being let down, getting excited and then being let down. Only this time, instead of him spinning the wheel, it would be me, because I'm chasing something that I know is never going to happen. Oh my God, I'm at the height of my life. Let me reach out to my dad. And then my dad has no clue really what it means and does not know how to show up. And there's no amount of me wanting, or there's no amount of a void or space there that is going to make him be something that he is not. And so in my life, I've just been, I've been content for a long portion of it, but the resolve for it, especially after the trip, was that I just realized he was just not meant to be. And as I get older and as I mature, which is more important than getting older, in my opinion, I just realized that there is a bigger plan. There is a much, much bigger plan for my life, and your life too. There's a much bigger plan for your life. And sometimes the people that are not meant to be there, they are not there for a reason. They are not there for a reason. And we do this thing because somebody told us to. We do this thing because it's that way for everyone else. And I see everyone else with their dads, and, their dads are contributing. Good for them. Their story is their story, just as your story is yours. But that's meant to be for them. You have no idea what their path was. You have no idea what happens behind those closed doors. You have no idea what they're chasing or what that hamster wheel of excitement looks like. You have no idea. You see the outward perception. Just like other people have looked at me and said, "You hate him. You hate him." For you to say that you hate him, I absolutely do not hate him. I would have to know him to hate him. I absolutely do not hate him. I am grateful that I didn't try to make something fit in my life that just did not. And what I'm okay with is that he lived his life the way that he wanted to. And that would be my greatest hope and greatest encouragement for anyone, is to live your life the way that you see fit and the way that you are able to. And if there is a piece that does not fit, it just does not fit, and you don't try to force it. Because I've seen all too many times, I was going to say all too well, but not so well. But I've seen too many times people who try to force relationships with parents or force relationships with siblings or something or another. And it just ends very badly for everyone. There is emotional strife, there's emotional instability, there's a feeling of immense betrayal at times. There are all of these negative emotions, feelings, and effects that happen because we tried to force people to be something based on how it should be and how it is for everybody else or how we perceive it to be. Well, we're estranged siblings. We should be better. And then you guys tear each other down. It's meant to be the way that it's supposed to. That's what it is. And when it doesn't feel organic and it doesn't feel authentic to you, it's okay to say, you know what? I am not going to force that. I'm not going to force it. I'm going to be exactly who I am. I'm going to do the things that I am meant to do. And whoever is meant to be there when it happens and to participate in it, they will be there. And for me, that is submitting to a much greater purpose. And so my hope is that we all examine our lives, our relationships. And I mean, relationships is in every way that we can connect and interact with other people, every type of relationship. My hope is that we examine those and that we really take a moment to face the hard truth. And the hard truth is, should this relationship even be? Why is this relationship what it is? And is this relationship beneficial to either of us or both of us or none of us? I don't know, whatever that looks like for you. My hope is that if this conversation makes you think of someone or some people, that you take the time to sit with your hard truth in it, like I had to sit with mine, because people will tell you all too well and all too commonly, well, that's your this and that's your that. And you guys should be better than this. And I just don't understand why you aren't closer and why you don't want to. You have to be able to sit with the thing that is plaguing you. You have to sit with the emotional void that isn't filled for you. And there's no amount of outward perception that can help you understand it. There's no amount of outward projection that can make you feel it any differently. And there's no amount of outside public scrutiny that people can put in your way to take away the responsibility of the person that is causing the negative interaction or the negative feeling in between. You don't own that. So people try to assign to you what should be assigned to those people, I guess is what I'm trying to tell you. If somebody was a bad father or bad mother or bad grandmother, bad grandfather, and people are putting scrutiny on you because you're not trying to make it work with them, you don't you don't own that. That should go to those people who should have been the people instilling the values, the people that were curating the expenses. That scrutiny is for them. That's not for you. So what I mean when I say the outward scrutiny, don't allow people to assign that to you instead of the person it belongs to. Hopefully I said it better that way. Don't feel bad about distancing yourself and protecting your peace. And definitely don't feel bad about saying the truth and living in it, because that is about who you are and that is about what means the most to you. So I hope that my hard truth has helped you examine yours. And listen, sometimes the hard truth is freeing. Sometimes the hard truth is sometimes it's isolating. Sometimes the hard truth just is what it is, and it's laying, all the cards on the table. Sometimes it's drawing a line in the sand with family members and friends and onlookers. But most importantly, the hard truth is freedom, liberation. So examine the things in your life that you find to be important. Find out whether you have a responsibility in holding yourself back, creating some cowardice in certain spaces, or causing you to mute in certain spaces. Examine those things and get to a place where you're able to say it first to you, and then if you need to others. All right. That has been my hard truth. This has been the Michael Experience Podcast. Thank you all so much for listening, and continue listening wherever you listen to your fine podcasts. All right. So you go out there and love on yourself first before you love on somebody else. Okay. And I'll see y'all on the next one. Peace and love, y'all. Bye.